our beliefs, our subconscious beliefs are so ingrained, we don't even realize we have them. It's the lens which we view our whole world through. People say it's before 7 our core beliefs are set, but they're there to keep us safe. So some of the coping mechanisms we have and our core beliefs, they served a purpose.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast Biz on the Brain with your host, Annemarie, where we discuss how to be your most unapologetic and authentic self in life and business, because you're one whole human being. So why split yourself and be different personas and different aspects of your life with different people with different businesses? No, we're not having that here. We're talking about how to be you and full on and absolutely capturing, mesmerizing, captivating is what I wanted to say. So all of the good things to make you feel good about yourself on your journey of being more self-fulfilled, or of having more self-esteem, and of attracting the right kind of people that vibe with what you have to offer. And in this episode specifically, we're going back to the roots. So childhood rearing, and especially if you are a parent, this episode is for you. Even if you're not, like me, I'm not a parent, but learning about parenting techniques and things to help you work through your own traumas, childhood stuff, all of the baggage, because we all have it, nobody's perfect, helps to actually be a better version of yourself, helps to be more well-rounded. It helps to, go through life in a more mindful and compassionate way towards yourself and others. And so in this episode, I'm talking to Camilla Miller, who is absolutely great when it comes to helping parents parent themselves and be better at showing up for their kids, not looking at them as they're a mini version, or as if they're like small adults, or they have to be fixed, or they're a project. No, but becoming a life coach for your kids, which also in turn makes you better at being your own coach in life. So it is this whole trickle-down effect, and I love this current shift in the generations of being more mindful, of being more self-assertive, of knowing your boundaries, of communicating your needs. And it all starts with how you're being parented. But, there's a lot of stuff that is being passed on through generations that we have to unlearn to be better at showing up for our kids, or, showing up for kids of other people, or even sometimes adults who sometimes act like kids. So without further ado, let me get Camilla Miller to introduce you into the concept of the way she sees parenting. Hello. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. I love talking to you about parenting. Even though I don't have kids, I learned so much from you, and I love that you teach parents something about themselves as well as their kids, so they can be like really perfect, well-rounded people. They're perfect in the sense of being like the best at everything, but just like being themselves, their true self. So do you want to quickly introduce what you do and how you change the world a little bit?
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm a parenting coach, yes, and I teach you how to become a life coach for your children. So really it is about learning how to bring out the best in our children and ourselves. So to really understand yourself and why you do what you do, and why your children do what they do. So really, when we have a better understanding of how humans work, we can raise our children to be the best versions of themselves, to lead with, they know who they are in the world, they have amazing self-confidence and self-belief about themselves, and see the possibilities in life. And the more that we raise our children this way, life becomes so much easier with children, because we not only raise children that, when we bring out the best in our children, and humans are we the best versions of ourselves. We're nicer to live with, we're nicer to interact with. We have willing cooperation between the parent and the child, and parenting doesn't feel like an uphill battle anymore. And we are authentic to ourselves, so we know how to hold healthy boundaries and how to communicate and have healthy relationships. And we're giving that gift to our children, so they know how they deserve to be treated in the world. They know how to have healthy relationships themselves, and how to hold healthy boundaries with themselves and with their friends and, future partners.
I love that. It's so important and such an essential life skill, because kids are a chore, but it's become such, I don't know, normalcy to just kind of bash them almost to a point, because it makes sense, like they're exhausting and there's a whole human being to raise, at least one if you have kids, many have more, and like that's a whole mission, but you're still also a whole human. So like you're also exhausted. Like, and nobody teaches you that. You don't
Yes.
learn that in school. Like your parents might have done things that you really don't want to repeat. And so you're like on your own devices, right?
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that so much in parenting, I struggled. The reason I became a parenting coach is my daughter, because I had the most easiest laid back son ever when he was born. I didn't think much of my parent, didn't have to think about my parenting or the tools I used because he was easy, laid back, compliant. And I just thought, I was a pretty epic because he was so easy. It was only when my daughter was born that I realized, oh, it wasn't my parenting skills. It was just that I had a really easy child. My daughter pushed me to my limits, and she had like the tantrums that took over family life. I mean, literally everything in her arms reach would go flying. I was fighting like I was fighting with my husband over the best way to discipline her, and it was exhausting. It was exhausting, and I felt like I was failing because everything I was told to do wasn't working. And I was told, like to take away her favorite toys and cancel play dates and all that kind of stuff. We used reward charts, and it wasn't working. And it made me feel even worse about myself because I was thinking, well, I'm doing all this stuff that's supposed to work and it's not working. So there must be that I'm failing, or I must have a really like the devil child. There must be something wrong with my child. And it was only when I realized that actually it was the advice I was given that was actually causing this cycle and causing more of the misbehavior and me feeling miserable about myself and not thinking I was failing. So it was only when I changed how I understood her behavior that everything shifted. And that is what I help parents do, because I think a lot of the time we focus on the symptom of the behavior. We focus on our child's behavior, trying to change it at the symptom level, but actually there's a symptom of what's going on rather than actually getting to the root cause and understanding why things happen and how we unknowingly add to the frustrations. We don't realize because we think we're told to do all this stuff, but actually a lot of the time it's actually causing more of the misbehavior.
Yeah. And it just goes on and on until adulthood. And that's why you have like so many adults who don't know how to actually work with other adults. Because I don't know, the base thing of what we're kind of taught is that you need to change in yourself and you need to change others. And it's never about acceptance. I think at the core of it, it's just like you have a full human and they're already there. They have a personality. And then you need to work with that. Like you not work against it. You're not trying to like chastise it out of them, train it out of them, like make them into this perfect little behaved creature that is very submissive. And then suddenly it's 18 and suddenly supposed to be independent. It is wild. And then even looking at the different parenting books and strategies and the different even cultural like approaches, like in child rearing over the past 100 years has been constantly shifting, constantly changing. So every generation already knows better than the other one because they only did one thing and then they see somebody else shaking it up. And that's kind of weird and threatening. And, people get so upset about, I don't know, gentle parenting. And a lot of people really love gentle parenting. And I don't have kids, but I'm on gentle parenting TikTok a lot. And it helps me with my own self-regulation and helping deal with other humans in a more compassionate way. So I think it's really important. But when we had a conversation about gentle parenting, you said something really cool that you have like something even better. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Do you know what I love? What you were just saying there is about somewhat traditional parenting is it feels like an uphill battle, doesn't it? Because we're going against trying to change something that's already perfect. Like our kids are already amazing humans, and we're trying to force them into a box that they're not. And it always feels like an uphill battle. And the way that I teach parenting, it's more to do with just being with your child, not the actual doing side. So I'm not here to tell you how you should parent or what your family values should be, but how humans work, like how to actually be with your child. I was talking to a mum recently. She's the most amazing mum. She was always on the go. She works full time. Her husband has long hours as well, and gorgeous kids, lovely, loving family. She was always on the go. She said, before working with you, Camilla, I used to think that I was with my child. I used to take them, like when her son was little, when she just had him, I'd take him out, take him to the woods, take him to the playground, take him to the zoo, like always on a mission, always doing stuff. And she thought that the doing stuff was actually meeting his need for connection. She's like, I'm a loving mum. I'm doing all this stuff with my kids. But yet he was still having major tantrums and still wanting more attention from the mother. She said, before working with you, I now realize that doing stuff is not the same as being. It's not the same as connection. It is that we can be doing all this stuff, but actually our kids need connection. And connection is not the same as attention. Connection is like feeling like they matter, like that they belong, feeling that they feel validated and seen and heard. And you can spend all day with your kids, but you still won't meet their need for connection if you're just in the same room. They're not getting that from their mom. So it was a real eye opener for her to
like performance
to slow down and actually just be, and meet the need for connection.
Yeah, it's almost like a performance when people feel like, okay, I have to tick these boxes. This is what the book says. This is what people say. This is like what everybody like recommends. Because already, like as a new mom, like again, I'm not speaking from personal experience. I'm speaking from like observing other people. But it's already so much to just suddenly have like this new life, and it's dependent on you. It's suddenly like your life does a 180, and then you have to keep track of so many things to keep this alive and happy that you sometimes forget that kids don't need to be showered with all of the best gifts and all of the coolest things. Sometimes it is just the simplest thing of just being there. You can tell a story, you can connect with them. And again, also just looking at the basics, like a love language. It's different for everybody. They learn it from you as well. But, like some kids just don't like to be touched that much. Other kids just want to cuddle. And like with a partner, you need to see what you can accommodate to help with their needs and teach them how to like voice stuff, but also do it with you. So they don't also override your needs, because that's what they will learn. If you constantly do it, then they will do it to themselves. So it's really about you being a good parent also with yourself to mirror it to them, but also doing it to them. Like it's so complex, but it's really great that you said be with the kid, like treat them as a human, because they're not just like mini adults like some people treat them, and they're not mini me's. They're a whole different person. And you don't get to tell them what that's going to be like. You can maybe have ideas, but like it's so difficult to not try to imprint that on them and like have all of these cool ideas. And kids want to please. So like again, this is their person. And I feel like coming from a place of curiosity might be really a good approach. Just like, let's figure out what you like. Like, let's just do it together. Like, do you like this or that thing? And again, it comes down with play. And I think when I'm around kids, it ignites my sense of play and curiosity, seeing the world differently. And that helps me also like have a cooler life, because I'm seeing things differently. And sometimes I just purposefully like do things like a kid. Like, let's just like draw whatever comes to mind just for funsies, because we just deprive ourselves as adults of this. And so kids can have a really cool impact on you and teach yourself as well. Like kids can hit you with wisdom left and right. Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes they can be devils, but sometimes they can be like sages. What's going on?
I really do. Yeah, I really do believe our kids are there to teach us so much about ourselves. And I love how you're saying, like, just to see the world through a child's eyes, because it's so different than how we see the world. And I love their logic. I love how they talk about things, and just in the moment. Our kids just are in the moment. That's all there is for our children. And so much of the time we get frustrated because we're thinking our children see the world like us, and how we see the world so differently. We have an understanding of time, and we're living in the past with regret and shame, and in the future of future fear. But our kids are just now is all there is. A child now is all there is. And when you really understand this concept, you can just delight in how they see the world. I always say to my clients, your kids don't have logic, because or the same logic as we do. They believe Father Christmas flies around the world, delivering presents. Like, they seriously believe that. So for us to try and use logic to try and change their behaviors just doesn't work, because they don't. It just doesn't work in that way.
Yeah, and then also they're also more in their bodies and their fields, like more unregulated. And I'm not even sure if adults are very regulated at most part. They're like repressed. It's different. But even if they're like, especially in their bodies, and then they process things as they arise, like instead of just repressing that, but they also just actually allow all of that. So we can learn a lot from that aspect of them, just like looking at, oh my gosh, maybe I should like listen to these feelings more because they have a very acute sense of intuition. So many times we like repress it in kids as well. Like, no, you need to hug everybody who's nice to you. Like that might be dangerous, like a dangerous lesson to teach to them. Like just override your own needs and sense of unease with some certain people. And it's just so wild to me that we don't acknowledge them. Like we expect them to have logic, but especially when they're like triggered, like, like anybody who has like overwhelm in that moment, you cannot reason with people when they're having a tantrum. It's not because they want to have a tantrum. It's not because they want to vex you. They have something going on, and then you can sit to them and talk about it, but it's not going to work. You need to like also learn these coping mechanisms of just sitting in this, working through this, being there. I think like that's like gentle parenting, but like then you can have logic when the survival mode is off, right? So like there's all of these aspects, I think, that can completely help unlearn if you're willing to enter that stage. But again, like that can also be triggering in the moment for the parents. So it's like triggering for everybody. So like what do you think of that?
Well, especially, if your feelings were never validated growing up, and they were dismissed, it's very, very, very triggering for you to then have to deal with, to listen to your child being upset. No wonder we want to shut it down so quickly. Part of becoming a life coach for your children is not just managing the moment and getting through the behavior, but it's thinking about, is the coping mechanisms I'm teaching my children, are they actually for now, but also for the future? This is so key. Like children that parents come to me, their kids are, hitting and kicking and throwing things and violent tantrums and throwing things. And the way we deal with it and language of listening is through success training, something we call success training, which is incredible, that the child then gets to these situations and you see a child going from like hour-long tantrums taking over family life to like 30 minutes to 20 minutes to like 10 to like 30 seconds, 3-year-olds like learning to manage their own emotions. And they're like, I did it. And they're so proud of themselves. And, even from 3 years old, they're getting skills, not just to shut down emotion, but actually, can you imagine a 3-year-old having the skills and the understanding of how they're feeling, how to manage it. And they're going to have those skills for life. Yeah, they're going to be healthy, emotionally illiterate, have empathy for other people, to be able to feel their emotions fully, get through them, and have amazing coping skills for the rest of their life, rather than, traditionally we just focus on stopping behavior and we don't realize that, it's just ineffective coping skills. Yeah, it's incredible watching kids go. And I remember my daughter, like, I did it, mommy, and just so proud about just incredible. Her inner voice for the rest of her life is proud of herself.
I love that. And then just, it sounds like such a glorious future with like Gen Alpha being much more mindful and like actually regulating their emotions instead of being like these adults who are like on the verge of like something all the time. We're snapping at people. Like we have so many unhappy people in the world. And I like what like it's always so important to focus on yourself first, to know like what needs you need and how you communicate that and how you can be happy, so you can spread that to other people and not just work yourself to the ground for other people, because then everybody kind of stays miserable because you don't show what that's like to be happy and content and have healthy conflicts and conversations. So like, I'm just so excited for this generation. So like you probably tick me off a lot because I'm like,
yes.
But
both my kids are teenagers now. I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old daughter. And so many people say your children just are so confident and so secure in who they are. And I get that compliment a lot. And one, it's so wonderful to hear, but also that it just goes to show that the work that I do and the way that we interact with our children day in, day out gets that, because we at the core of language of listening is becoming the coaching model I use and teach is becoming a life coach for children. So that's we're in charge of their personal growth. Think about it like that. Whether we do it intentionally or unintentionally, we are always in charge of our personal growth, because through our interactions, we are raising our children, their identity, who they believe they are in the world, that their self-belief, their self-confidence, in charge of their mental and physical health, all of that. We're doing that. But when we do it intentionally, and language of listening gives parents 3 simple tools to use, so it's not overwhelming. But when we do this consistently, and it just becomes part of how we are raising our children, our children's best self naturally arises. and they learn to trust themselves, know who they are in the world, have amazing, strong self-esteem and self-confidence, and know how they deserve to be treated. Yeah, they know they have that self-worth because you're treating them with respect and understanding. So they demand that of other people. I never understand this thing, like we've got to prepare them for the real world because not everyone's going to be
Right.
and then but actually, what's the real world anyway? I never understand this concept. The real world, we're living in the real world. And actually, I want my children to grow up knowing how they deserve to be treated. So they see that as a red flag. Like, I want my kids to know, actually, no, I don't want to be spoken to like that. That's not okay with me. I don't want you in my life. I want my children to know how they deserve to be respected. So they have friends who treat them that way and they treat their friends that way. And they know that actually my daughter came out of school, she said something, her teachers, one of her teachers said, you've got to, about one of the rules at school, you're going to suck it up kind of thing. You're going to have to get used to having a job you don't like. My daughter was like, what? Like, I will never have a job I don't like. If I don't like it, I'll get another one. Like, she knows that if she goes into an environment that's toxic or has a horrible boss, no, that's not okay with her. And she won't just suck it up and deal with it. But what messages are we tell kids that they just have to put up with crap behavior from other people? No, like we get to choose who's in our world. Yeah, we don't just go into the world, but you get to choose where what jobs you have, what relationships you have, what friends you allow into your world. And we need to teach them from a young age that that's what they deserve and that's their self-worth. And they then, because they've experienced it, they then go on to give that to other people. They treat other people naturally with respect and understanding because they know that's been modeled to them.
Right? No, I totally agree. And I'm like the perfect example for the opposite. Like I was like trained for the big bad world out there. So like I always just wanted to have a safe haven, right? I didn't need battle training. Thank you. Yeah, but it never really landed. Like, like side jabs or like, never being good enough and just overperforming and like all of that. And just like it made me scared so much and it made me such a victim for being bullied at school, bullied at work. And it was just always awful. And so like, why can't I just come home or to someone where I know like I'm good enough that can fortify me to be in this world and endure it, but then also realize I don't actually have to endure it because like that is a very German mentality too, like suck it up, like you gotta do it. And until I had like like a full breakdown at HR office because it was just so vile at work, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna like leave. So bless you, leave the country, go like as far away as possible, start again. Until I hit that low point, I firmly believe that was what life was like. I had no agency. I had like to just be like, I don't know, like drifting around and whatever fruit like landed, I needed to stick it out. Like I had no agency in my life. Like it was all predetermined. I didn't realize that I can, yes, say no to a lot of things. I can make my own path. I can be my own boss if I wanted to. I can travel the world if I wanted to. But if you have somebody in your corner, which should ideally be your parents, right? They should like shield you and protect you, but also like allow you to walk your own way while still like being able to catch you if you needed to, instead of just scolding you for like misstepping, right? So like all of that is so important on fortifying your personality because ultimately that's what makes you weak. When you have no defined sense of self and self-confidence and self-worth, then you will always feel like you're depending on outside forces, which makes you vulnerable to being manipulated or hurt. And yes, everybody will like, like you will be exposed to hurt. You will make mistakes. Things will feel awful, but at least you got it. Instead of just like, you have to endure it. That's a whole different thing.
It is. Interesting you say like fearful because being raised with punishments and control it makes us fearful. It makes us fearful of mistakes because we're always looking out for the worst case and what bad things can happen to us. And no one, it actually puts a brakes on us wanting to go out into the world and experience what we want. And now I see in my children that be a situation or we have an issue or a problem. Their first thought is, what's the solution? And you actually see, it's incredible watching that their brain is wired to look for solutions. Because actually, growing up, when we had a family motto, which is don't look for blame, look for solutions, so important. I wanted to ingrain it in my kids because so much of the time is we focus on who did what, who said this, what happened. And I always think, do you know what? Move forward, because we just get stuck in Groundhog Day looking for blame and criticism, and we don't find solutions to move forward. And moving forward, like, oh, we had a problem, because problems are part of our human experience. Yes, we're going to have problems in life. We're going to mess up. We're going to do things. We're going to say things that we later regret. We're going to behave in ways that we know that we most probably shouldn't have, but we were hijacked by our emotional brain. That's part of humanness, and to punish part of life is just going to take us backwards. So I always think, just find solutions, move forward, and you're better equipped. And you literally train your children's brains to think that way. It's amazing.
Yeah, because I am a master at seeing the worst case scenario. I can like blow it out of proportion so easily. See like multitude of things can go wrong, but at the same time, I could actually use my brain to do the opposite. But it's so much harder for me because I haven't been exposed to this. Always just like imagine all of these things going wrong. It's like our family mantra, like what could go wrong next, right?
Yeah, the new phrase on that.
Yeah, and they call me Chaos Queen. That's their nickname for me. And then they're surprised that things always used to blow up in my face. And I was just like a victim all the time. Like, yes, poor me. And now that I was just like, you know what? If there's a creepy person around, I'm not like, oh my God, look at all these creeps. Like, I was just like, fuck off. Just like walk away, like whatever. Or like stuff blows up. I could sit there crying, or I could just go do something about it, or like accept things as they are and move something, but I still have agency. And the more I like went on my own path, completely cut off everyone for a while to just see what's going on with me, like relearning and finding myself, like that was such a game changer to me. And I just wish that would be more implemented in schools. And I think that might be more of a trend. And I think you're also working with schools, right? To help.
Yes. Yeah, I do some workshops in schools. I would like to do more with the teachers as well, because it's just so empowering. But I love how that you are now on a different path. Like, you recognized how your upbringing, but want to do things differently. And I think it's incredible, the work you've done on yourself, and knowing your worth and what's available to you.
Still working on it, but I'm better.
Yeah, but we all are, aren't we? Working on our own personal growth.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, and I think it never stops, and it's both exciting and exhausting.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of working with other people, or maybe like having a coach like you on the side. You have a neutral person to help you, to be that safe haven, basically, to have a soundboard with somebody and you feel heard. And, sometimes our brains are ridiculous and will tell us the stupidest stories. And then we just get hung up on it, and then sometimes take it as truth. And then when you speak it out loud or talk it through with somebody, then they can like gently nudge you in a direction where you can start to question that is not your reality, that it's just like some kind of fantasy you created, that you can project it onto what's going on or color your actions in that lens when it's not real. And again, you have the ability to redirect those thoughts, or prove them wrong, or look for confirmation bias in a positive way. So having outside people to not only have to do everything yourself, like be on your own path, like that has been like my thing for a long time. That was like, I have to fix myself by myself. Like I can't talk to people about it, or like I can't put it on other people and all of that, which isn't true, because the bonding really happens and the growth really happens with other people, because they can help you, they can call you out, but also they have their own issues. Nobody's perfect. So you can do it together if they're like willing, if you're on that path as well. Not everybody is, and you can't make people change, and you can't just make them change according to the potential you see in them. That's not okay. But, it just helps to start with yourself, and then it could maybe inspire other people, or, you are open to being inspired yourself.
Yes. Yeah, it's so important to other people, because I think when we have our beliefs, our subconscious beliefs are so ingrained, we don't even realize we have them. A lot of the time, it's the lens which we view our whole world through. We don't even realize we have a lens. Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of the time, our subconscious beliefs were put in place before 7. People say it's before 7 our core beliefs are set, but they're there to keep us safe. So some of the coping mechanisms we have and our core beliefs, they served a purpose. But understanding now that they don't help us now, then we can break that pattern and not pass it on to our children. It's very difficult to be a confident parent and really empowered parent if we have these subconscious beliefs. And working with a mum who was raised to be the good child and always thought that she was in charge of everybody else's emotions. And we think that's a good thing, but actually, one, it's not true. We're not in charge of other people's emotions, but we think that we're being kind and we're being thoughtful, but actually, what happens, especially when we have children, is that it backfires because we can't hold healthy boundaries. If our child's upset, which is natural, our children are going to be upset. We are going to have to hold boundaries because we're in charge of their safety and their emotional well-being. But if we feel like we are in charge of their emotions, then we're going to change our boundaries and we're going to go in and jump in and fix our kids. And there again, we're passing down that belief that emotions are bad and that we're in charge of other people's emotions, and they pick up on that as well, and they don't learn how to have healthy emotions, how to go through their emotions, and how to hold healthy boundaries. Because if we are always changing our boundaries, they're gonna think that's the same. They're gonna do the same. So you see, it's only when we realize that she had this core belief of I'm not a good mom if my child's unhappy. Yes, she's gonna break that cycle and realize she's a great mom. Even if her child's upset, she's still a great mom.
I love that. And children are very perceptive. And it circles back to when you said that, this kind of hypocrisy between trying to like respect somebody, but like disrespecting your kids, just like having this double standard of like, you don't talk to me like that. But then the kid just basically mirrored you in a way. And then when you try to make your kid feel good about their body, but you always talk to yourself negatively in front of the mirror, you look at your roles or whatever, or like you beat yourself up about whatever, your kids will see that. So you can tell them you're beautiful and all bodies are beautiful. Like they will, like your action belies your actual, words. And kids will pick up on that in every aspect, not just like body image, like so many different ways of being a pushover. If you can tell, like if you try to raise confident young little girls, but they see the dad as just man of the house and expect to have a little like house slave, just like slippers ready, the food ready, the kids need to be quiet. Like you're being a liar, right?
Yes. Also, do you know what I think that because this is another thing that gets passed through generations of people thinking that a difference of opinion is an argument, and like your child having a difference of opinion is being disrespectful.
Oh yeah,
both are right. And what's really sad, I find, is that I have so many clients, they tell me that, do you know, like parents don't even know me because I was so used to being trained to be the good girl or only saying what my parents believed in. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion. I wasn't allowed to have a different belief. And they stopped sharing. And actually, when you do that on the surface, these parents think, oh, I have a really good child and my child is always doing what I want, a compliant child. But what they fail to realize, which I think is so heartbreaking, is that they don't know their children. Because if we're not allowed to share our true selves with another human, then we don't know them. It's like we have to pretend to like food we don't like, or like a kind of movie we don't like, or anything in life. We just have to pretend to like something. Then it's a lie, isn't it? It's a lie to ourselves and it's a lie to the other person. And it's such a fake surface relationship.
it really is. And yeah, in any relationship where you don't feel safe enough to disagree, that is a really bad sign. That then means it's like, if you were in a romantic relationship and suddenly your partner would be all quiet, then they would probably already mentally break up with you and then leave. But in a family, you can't. So like that is really treacherous ground, especially with the common narrative of like, oh, blood is thicker than water. You have to like honor your parents and you have to love them. And there's all of these different stories going around. We're like, oh my gosh, this generation is breaking up with their parents. Like, how can they? How are they so cruel? Do they not have a heart? And it's one of the hardest things to do, to actually cut people off, set that boundary, because they constantly disrespect it. They don't see your needs. They don't see you as a person. They don't acknowledge that you have all of these different personalities, and they can't accept that. And then when people just cut it off, especially when they have their own kids, and then the grandparents want to raise that kid in their old way, which the actual parents know was harmful to them, so they do not want to pass it on, and then they cut off contact. And then, you know, it pains everybody, but if there's no responsibility, no actual communication, why this is happening, instead of just putting the blame, like, oh my gosh, they're so disrespectful, they're ungrateful. Yeah, kids these days, like, they don't even respect their elders. I'm like, but if you didn't respect them, where do you get the respect from? It's not just handed out automatically because you're older.
Yes, yes. But a lot of people think respect is like earned, or respect is through fear. We didn't
No.
actually just, your children aren't respected. They're not doing it out of respect. They're not doing it out of willing cooperation. They're listening out of fear and out of obligation. And that's only going to damage your relationship. And then they get to adulthood and they realize, yeah, they cut off their parents. I see a big shift in this now. There's more awareness, isn't there?
Yeah, it's awareness, and it's just this cycle breaking, and it's so hard because, yeah, it almost feels like it's unnecessary if we could just communicate. But I think communication in and of itself is one of the biggest lies we're being fed, like growing up. Like, just look at any of the movies. Miscommunication is the core driver of any story, especially if it's like a romantic movie. The conflict is always, can they talk to each other, like Romeo and Juliet, just like off each other, but they could have just like said something, like that nobody talks. It's always like the biggest issue. And it's just also like culturally fed. Like some cultures are like worse than others in like being so hedging around things and being so vague. And then you have people who just don't get it. Like me, I have ADHD. Like a lot of times when people just say these like fuzzy things, and I'm just like, tell it to me straight. I do not understand what you mean. They're like, but you know what I mean. I'm like, I don't. Like when people flirt with me, I don't get that. Like I'm just like, what? Like, are you being nice or not? And like, I don't get it. Tell me straight, right? And then with kids, like when my parents were telling me sometimes like certain things, it's just like, like to do something or like clean the room is like a typical thing. Like tell a kid to clean a room with ADHD. What does that mean? I don't know. I have specific information depending on, again, what your child needs. Because if I tell you I don't know how to do it and you go like, just start, that is not helpful at all. Because I literally didn't know how to do it. Sit me down, do it with me. Like, what do I start with first? Everything seems the same priority. Do I like clean the shelves, or do I take the books off the shelves? But do I keep them in order? Or do I need to start with the bedding first? Or do I open the windows first? Like, what is the step? I don't know. And then my little kid brain is exploding. I'm sitting on the floor crying, and then they're shouting. And I was just like, what? This is not helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, and then again, if people have certain expectations, and I can see that in workspaces as well, like, just start, and I'm just like, according to what like criteria do I need to process this project, and then like you figure it out, and then I do it my way, which my brain will usually come up with a totally different thing than people expect. That's just for me, that's my default. Like people never realize that my brain just goes sideways. It just is. It's like my special skill, and
I love that
they come in, and then they'll make it as if it's a bad thing. Like, oh, I didn't think you would do it that way. I was like, well, I asked you all of these why questions, and then you hate the why questions because you think I'm being dumb and like dense. And I told you I'm not. I will do it my way if you let me do it my way. But then, and then because I had that growing up all the time, like teachers would give these vague questions, and I would be sitting there already answered everything, and then I would have like a little mental breakdown because how could I be the fastest in the group? Like apparently I can't be the cleverest, so like there must be something off. And then I would rewrite all of the answers and make them wrong according to the teacher, but I just went on a whole different level of overthinking and going on different scenarios, so they weren't wrong, they were just not according to the standard. And then I got into trouble because they saw I had it right. So why did I make it wrong? I was like, it's not wrong. Let me just explain it to you. And they would not let me. And they would call me troublesome. And I had fights with teachers all the time because they were taking away grades from me to punish me. And I was like, this is unfair. It's unfair.
Wow.
I'm still worked up about it. So
yes, I would be worked up about it because it's just so unfair, isn't it? Especially because you ask right from the get-go. When this is the same with the kids, isn't it? It's so frustrating. And then we blame the kids.
Mm-hmm. And then I don't want to do the homework anymore. Like, what's the point? And then suddenly I'm troublesome again. I'm like, so like I'm troublesome either way. Like, I don't care right now.
Yes. That's what you think of me. I'm going to go and do it anyway.
yeah, I'm just going to do whatever I want because I'm like bad. Like, I'm surprised I didn't become a rebel. I was like too much of a good girl. But I was like underlying anxiety all the time. And people were like, oh, she's so quiet. And inside I'm like dying.
Yes. Yeah. Ow. So much growth for you now to recognize that, to
Yeah.
understand that, to understand what actually happened, and it wasn't your fault. It was that there wasn't anything to do with you. Amazing that you see that, but you can see it's frustrating because you don't deserve to be treated like that. I see this a lot in kids. The kids that are defiant, the parents come to me and my kids are defiant and they never listen and and they're troublemakers and they're stubborn and inflexible. A lot of the time, it's because is your experience is that they're doing stuff and they're always being told off and criticized and saying they get things wrong. So they actually, I don't think defiance comes from that. They're defending themselves. Then these are the kids that aren't going to be pushed into a corner and just submit. They're defending their right to how they see the world and the fairness of it, and they see it. And so actually, it comes from them protecting their core self.
Yeah.
And like, I don't deserve that treatment. I might see the world differently, but I don't deserve to be treated like that and seen like that and told off and miss out on grades because you knew you should have got, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And then sometimes, like when I'm pushed too much into a corner, like until that point, I'm like super quiet and I let it wash over me like I used to. And then I would just snap and I would just like bite people's head off and be like so angry because I was, it's usually for me at that feels like I'm protecting some other thing. Like I was never like taught to stand up for myself. I was punished for standing up for myself, speaking my mind. But when it became so ludicrous in my mind that the entire concept they were like berating was bigger than me. It wasn't even about me. It was just like the concept is bad. Like when I get so angry at any kind of unfair treatment or like, like this person gets better treatment for no reason than another. Like I snap. Like that is something that triggers me so much. So when I realize the entire concept is flawed, the system is wrong, I just become like this activist, like especially if somebody else is involved, like somebody else gets that treatment I did, I'm just like, oh no, you don't do this to other people. Like you can do it to me, but not to other people. Like it's always like protecting something other than me, which is kind of sad. But that's usually what got me into action and like fighting for like my grades and stuff. Like at one point I had this teacher, she just hated my guts for some reason. I don't know. And I was one of the best students in this math class. And she just was pulled out from retirement. Because I couldn't find anybody. And
Wow.
then she was bored beyond belief. She wanted just to be in front of her TV. She didn't want to go back to the kids. She obviously didn't like kids. I was like, why are you a teacher? And then she just wrote down like the main calculation. And then she wrote down the results. And then she was like, go figure it out. And then she just doodled something on her desk. And we were all like, A levels. We were like, we need to learn stuff. We can't just know things like from osmosis. Like, what's she doing? And so I was the only one. I even polled everybody. I was like, did you get it? Like, do you know what to do? Like, nobody, like literally nobody knew. And so I was the one sacrificial lamb, like raising my hand all the time. Like, can you explain it for me? Because she was already thinking I'm like stupid beyond belief. Even though like she thought I'm like the dumbest person alive. Because I was the only one asking questions. And I was like, whatever, I'm just beyond repair anyway in her eyes. I was always like, can you tell it? And she would just snap at me and fight me, like, you're rebellious, that. And I even asked my mom, can you please reason with this woman? She ignores me. And my grades are falling. I used to be an A student. Now I'm like a C student? Like, what the heck? And she saw my mom and she's like, oh, you're the mom of that troublemaker. I will not talk to you. And she just walked away. She was so disrespectful. And now as an adult, like, oh, I would have just been a banshee. Like, I would have, like, descended on her as, like, if I were my own parent, I would have just, like, exposed her. Like, any which way this person needed to go. She was so bad. But, like, I suddenly became this vicious person with this weird agenda to, like, get education. But that was bad. I was like, what is going on?
Yes, like even at that age, you knew how you deserved to be treated, and that way.
No, but you're being limited in your expression and your rights. And I love the current generation, like Gen Z and like Gen Alpha. Like they will like start a riot. They will go protest. They will post on social media. They have petitions. I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know I could actually go to the like director of the school. Like, but she was also terrible. But, you know, I was like, why? I have options. I wish I had options other than being like the rebellious girl all of a sudden, which I never had any experience in. So I was like, great,
You want to
nobody's
stand
talking
up for
about.
rights.
I know. It was just like, can you just learn maths, even though I don't like math, but I need to learn it to get an A. Thank you very much.
Yes. Wow. Wow.
I know.
You can see your drive still now, the drive.
Yes,
And
I'm
it's
so
understanding.
yeah. Like when I hear one of my friends like say something like, "Yeah, my kids like this one teacher," she's like, "Tell me which one." Oh, like tell me. I'm like, I'll do something about it. You can't do this. Just like, yeah, I've been there. I can't do this. You know, the damage is done. Look at me. Look at me. Yeah, so I'm attesting about it.
Purpose. There's your purpose.
Maybe.
Drive.
Same with the kids from the mean adults.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't. You know what? Changing how we see humans and changing how we interact with our children, it just makes life so much more simpler because we can get the behavior we want, but also the long term skills. Our kids have these skills for life, and they just when we have our needs met, when we feel like we matter and we have self-worth and compassion, understanding, we're just better humans in general.
Yes. And also we know, like, because we intrinsically know the value of things, you also are not fooled easily. Like, for instance, when you're in school, you learn all of these separate disciplines, these separate skills, and it only took me 10 years later for me to click in my head, like, oh, they're all interconnected. Now it makes sense holistically why I had to learn physics, I had to learn like chemistry, right? It all matters. Like, it's not, like separate in this world, and most of it you never really apply in your real life. So like, that's an issue. But like when you see how things just intertwine and all of this random knowledge can help you in certain aspects, like what chemicals not to mix when you clean stuff, like stuff can blow up in your face. You don't want to like spill water on a hot oil, like stuff like that, like practical things. It just somehow makes so much more sense. But then also like, some people are like very weird about like, oh, you have to have sports in school. Why? Do you have to have art in school? Why? And it's not just about that. It needs to have a purpose maybe for your future career, which the kid at that age doesn't actually know, and you don't have to tell them. But it's to give them a well-rounded education. And there's so many ways to have a well-rounded adult, even if they're not gonna get to be artists. But it's just that creativity that you unleash, different tools you give people, or like just the experimentation to see what you actually like. Maybe you do like crayons, maybe you do like paint, maybe you do like pottery, maybe you just like soaking up pictures, just looking at the colors. Like there's just something about just self-discovery that is not really taught, but it's actually part of it. But the focus, if it were just to shift and like maybe reduce the grades, like I never understood why art had to be graded. That's rubbish. Right, just like it makes kids also angry at art. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, you don't have to be good at art. You just have to art.
Exactly. Just enjoy the process.
Right? It builds this needless resentment. Like, I don't want to go to a gallery. I have to like write an essay. I'm like, oh my God, why? There's a difference between learning like skills of how to discern things or like take things in a different way to interpret things and look at composition, like to get a better understanding or maybe even process your own emotions through that. Just like how you project things, like what it tells about yourself. But, it's never really framed as that. Or, as a kid, maybe you don't even get it when teacher said it. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. But, there's so many ways to reframe things to make it more purposeful, more useful. And then even when you realize, okay, I'm not an artist, but I know how to draw these things and it makes me happy. Or suddenly I'm like, I used to be good like in chemistry, but like that's not something I pursued, but it can still help me like have transferable skills because I realized maybe I'm more analytical or maybe I'm more creative or like I work better with structured days or I work better when I have more free time. Like you learn things that you can use in any kind of business and any kind of work. And then you can be like somebody who starts a business and then shift careers entirely and realize you still are worthy, you still have skills, and you can still convince people that you can apply them. Because that was my biggest issues as a graduate, because I was always this academic person, super nerd girl, everything theoretical, like had in my books. And then people were just constantly questioning me because I generally didn't realize that me speaking like 6 languages, me having multiple degrees, me being both creative and analytical and strategic could be applied in marketing, could also be applied in like data analysis, could also be applied in management, could also, they didn't get it. And I tried to tell it, it's the same. It's just different about my ability to get into the matter. And any new job will require you to just completely learn something new anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Oh, I love this. So true.
People are stuck in just these rigid notions of what you can do because you only have one specific discipline. And I think it comes down to being the specialist society, which I also loathe. Just to pronounce loathe, because I'm a generalist. I don't do specialty. Like if I'm specializing in something, it's just my current hyper focus. It will blow over. I will lose interest. But
Yes.
know a ton of different things. But because of that, I can like save the day in any situation because I know random stuff. I've done random stuff at some point. Usually, like there's always a skill that comes in handy, but also I can see big picture. And if you just constantly like in school when it didn't click for me, because I'm like, why do I need all of these very specific skills? Suddenly, when I like zone out, and not a lot of people, I guess, do that or get trained to do that. It's like one of my skills. Suddenly, like you can see how things just don't make sense overall, how you can merge things in a different way, and then. Like that's a way to like help kids just play around. That's what kids do all the time. Like they build the weirdest kind of constructions. They draw people funky with like eyes sideways. Like, they see things differently. And sometimes kids can be genius inventors just because they don't have the preconceived notions and structures imposed on them yet.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I think to enjoy learning, it's the process of learning, isn't it? It's the process and understanding why rather than the end goal. But it's enjoying that, because that makes us feel confident and capable in our abilities, and to love the process rather than the end goal. Because no one has the same job for life anymore. We can adapt and evolve, and it's the process. It's of enjoying the actual process of learning and seeing the merit in just the process rather than the end goal. And then, as you said, you can go into the world and you can do anything because you have the core skills, especially the interpersonal skills. I was talking to a friend recently about this and saying you can have the best grades in the world. You can be like the top A student, but if you don't get on with anybody,
oh yeah, I was such a
you're not getting on. Like, it's so true, isn't it? Like no one sits in a box in an office and just works away. It's interpersonal skills. We have to know how to get on with other people, because otherwise your A grades aren't gonna be good. They'll get you out the door, but as soon as you have that interview, people are like, "Well,
yeah, that's what I got off. Like people were like, "Who is this weird alien?" Like weird vibes. She doesn't even know how to like.
You want to know how you need both. You need
Or like at the core of it, I just needed self-confidence to be like, what, if they don't get it, they don't get it, and I still am fine. But I let it get to me so deeply. Like it affected me. Like every rejection was a deep wound, and it just added. And I had zero self-confidence, which led me into a huge depression, which led me into this place where I was bullied so much, and I tolerated it because that's what I was taught. Right? And so it got worse and worse and worse until I realized, what? I do whatever the heck I want. You pushed me so much in the corner, I'm going to screech at you. I'm gonna run away to Australia. Thank you very much.
Wow. I'm glad you woke up now. Now you realize that you're not up well, and that it's all yes. Yeah. What's so true, the way we raise our children is we have to be intentional about the way we raise our children and ask ourselves whether the tools we're using is actually getting us the long-term goal. I I think like parenting is that we have to know where we're heading before we start. We have to know what kind of relationship we want with our children growing up, and what kind of people do we want them to be, and understand their personal growth. And if we're on a detour, it suddenly becomes, day in, day out, we're on this detour. We're not going. Our day-to-day interactions are not taking us where we want to go. We need to realize we're on a detour to get back on. We have to be intentional. Otherwise, we raise children that don't have self-worth, that don't see the capabilities, they don't see the possibilities in the world. We need to make sure that our day-to-day interactions really do line up with where we want to be heading. Otherwise, we won't have relationships with our kids further down the line. They'll be like, "See you later." They're like, "I can't wait to get out of home."
Yeah, or you get kids who like hang out with the wrong sorts of people, so to say, where you push them into some other place that seems more accepting, but is actually not nurturing to them. But like that's what they're craving, so that's what they're gonna look for, right?
100%. Yes. Yeah. Our kids just want to feel like they belong, that they matter, that they're important to us. And if we don't give them that, they're going to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know who they're gonna hang out with, if they feel more accepted. And at the end of the day, you cannot control the kid. You cannot like select the friends for them, and maybe they make their mistakes, and that's also fine. But if they're already very self-confident people and they feel like somebody's pulling wool over their face and like trying to push them into some cult or whatever, then they can also be like, hang on a minute, maybe I should talk to somebody about this. Maybe my gut feeling is really off and I listen to it. Because you don't have that override from people telling you everybody knows best, but not you.
Exactly. If we raise children that aren't allowed to have an opinion, they're not allowed, they're told they're wrong for how they feel, they're told they're wrong for what they want, they stop trusting themselves, and they start, as you said, they get into a whole host of problems further in life. When your children know their worth, they know that how they deserve to be treated, that's a red flag. They're like, you don't treat me that way. They'll get out of that relationship much quicker.
Right. Yeah. And oh gosh, that is such a cool. Just like he's like, nah, I'm out. Because I really love my intuition, but sometimes it's just so easy to hear the anxiety more than the intuition, and then ask for advice, and then knowing, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask this person for advice because their advice feels wrong. Like, and then that is also a good sign if you know that. But sometimes if you just listen to all of these outside voices more, trust them more, even if they mean well, even if they have a lot of experience, they're still not you. They're still not in your shoes. And
Yes.
yeah, they still haven't felt that that feeling in your gut. Sometimes you can't, you just have to listen to yourself, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yes. When our kids come to us with issues, it's so important for us to listen more. So often our kids will come to us, and if they're met with, telling off, why would you do that? That's stupid. Or what were you thinking? They're not going to come to us. They're not going to come and share their problems with you. Or if they're met with a lecture, or they're met with like, I've done that before, kind of like dismissive.
Or comparison.
Yeah, all these little interactions we have with our kids. Our kids are gathering information, like, is it safe to share that with mom or dad? Is that safe to come? And if it's not, they're going to stop sharing. And then we don't have that influence over them because we don't get to hear what's going on. They don't share with us. I'd like to think, and then people in your life that when something happens, good or bad, there's people that you want to phone straight away. Yeah, like, who you want to share that information with. And there's certain people that like, no way in hell. You just, even if they're like a good family member, like, I'm not sharing that with them because I know the kind of reaction that I'm going to get. So know who you are and aren't. And it's really important that we're aware of the way we respond to our kids. Yeah. And I always think, in the past, I used to think when I was really struggling with my daughter, I used to think that it meant being more aware of my role within the dynamic. It was like judging me, saying I got it wrong or that I'm not good enough. But actually having awareness as a parent is so super, super duper empowering, because we get to decide then. We have more tools to use and more awareness of our role within the dynamic, and to be able to make different choices. But if we don't know, we can't change.
Exactly. And then just question stuff that you just even subconsciously, like without thinking, on autopilot, you just throw out, like the typical, like, oh, you need to eat your vegetables because, and then you make up some stupid story, or like the classic super problematic one, like, but the kids in Africa are starving. Like, it doesn't matter to the kids in Africa, which is problematic and racist, come on. But like, also, it doesn't matter to them if I eat these veggies or not. This is whataboutism. Stupid. And again, they override their feeling of, I'm already sated, or maybe there's some sensory issues, or maybe, I actually don't like the food. Like, there could be a gazillion reasons. It's super frustrating when you make the food and you already overwhelmed. Yes. All of that is true. But at the same time, you can't just be lazy. Like, it's kind of lazy parenting, and it's just so typical. Like, these throwaway phrases, what makes you stronger. People like, don't cry about this, bruise me. For a kid, that is a big deal because they don't have to do the taxes and accounting and like blah, blah, blah. Like, for them, that is in the moment, like you said, right now, everything hurts. and then somebody shouting makes it worse. Like you like dismissing kids' problems. It's just cruel because that's ultimately the inner voice that you will cultivate in yourself. Like so often, I have caught myself like berating myself over like stubbing my toe, and then I'm getting mad at myself for being stupid, or like something spills, or like like last month I was making myself porridge as a super cool adult does, right? I was cracking porridge, so I made porridge, but it spilled, like actual porridge. It spilled over my hand, so I had a huge burn on my hand when I was standing there for an hour, like with the tap running, and it didn't go away. And I was like, "You're so dumb! Like, why do you do?" And then I caught myself. I was like, "Hang on!" So I was like, "No, what do I need?" And I was like calling like the emergency hotline. So like, what do you suggest I do? And then I had to go to the emergency room, and then I had to be like, it wasn't that bad, but
Yeah, bad enough.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I could have just been here being like, oh my God, you did them. Like, oh my God, who makes purse? Like, I could have like, and I was like, no, I'm in pain. What can I do? And then I just fixed it. And I was like, it happens.
Well,
And I was so surprised with myself. I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud. I did that to myself nicely, It was a
It's
nice thing.
yes. And imagine raising your children that way. So, there's interesting, that inner voice, that first critical inner voice came because that's how your parents used to talk to you. So the way that we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. So when they mess up, if we're like, well, you're so stupid, why did you do, all that kind of crap we say, then they start taking that on as that's how they talk to themselves. And now you catch that. And you're like, oh, I'm not going down that spiral. I actually, what, I'm capable. I can find a solution. I can help myself. Imagine doing that right from the kick. I think it's just,
I know, it takes so much time too. Or like even when I was at the emergency room with my little glass of water, because I needed cool all the time. It was excruciating. So I was running around with like my hand tucked into this glass, just like my little personal glass of water, like Johnny Depp with his glass of jar. Anyway, and I would just like put it on the reception desk and be like, so hey, I'm here, like I'm a bird. Can you look at it? And it was like at 1 a.m. in the morning, and they were all like, what the heck? Crazy woman. And people were like almost laughing at the hilariousness of it. And like in the past, I would have felt like bad about it, rejected, stupid, silly, whatever. And I was just like full on embracing it, like, look at my jaws, it's cool. So like I'm sitting here in my jaw, like watching K-pop in like the waiting room, like I don't care, I was just embracing the weird woman vibe, and and that made it much more tolerable. Like I could have just done the opposite, which I would have used to like 10 years ago, but now I'm like, no,
you rejoice in yourself, like you trust yourself, you know what you like and want and who you are.
Yeah, but sometimes, it would have been harder if there were like other people around. There was like, maybe I needed to hide the pain, blah, blah, blah. But like, no, like, so I like train on myself, and then I can replicate that in other scenarios where there might be people who might have opinions and might judge me. But again, that is not my thing. Like, that's their business. Keep it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The judgment, if we know that their judgments can't be true about us, then that's how, that's not true. So, we don't need to take that judgment on. It's if the other people's judgments, there's a core truth in it somewhere in us, then that's where we get upset about.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm still working on that, but like it's a process.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing talking to you and seeing, how you were raised and the relationship you have with your children, with your parents, I mean, and your growth now and how you value yourself and see yourself and demand respect from others. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's like a fully different, like I'm a full grown changeling. Right?
Yeah,
when you put somebody here, I'm not like, I'm in so many different iterations of a person. Like I've been through so many metamorphoses. It's crazy, but like also cool.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything we haven't covered yet? Because we went so full on into parenting and like talking about self and little like inner child almost. I don't know. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Do you know that I think it's with our parenting, so many parents come because to fix their child, like their child is the problem, and asking me to fix the broken child. But actually, a lot of it is to do with our own parenting, our own understanding of why we behave the way we do, and where our core beliefs come from, and how we're passing them often unknowingly onto our children. And when we change, I always say this, when we change, our kids follow. And actually, it sounds scary, but actually that it's far easier to change ourselves than try and change somebody else, because we can't change somebody else. So when we felt empowered you actually have tools that actually work with human nature, and it becomes so much more easier and more enjoyable because we get to feel good about ourselves. Because the other crap advice we're told, the punishments and the rewards and all that, it doesn't feel good for us. It doesn't feel good for our child. And most of us, we don't want to be doing that, but we're told we have to. So when we find tools that actually really align with who we want to be and really trust ourselves and know how to hold healthy boundaries and how to speak in a way that empowers us and our children, then everything else just becomes so much easier. And I see
Exactly.
huge shifts within such a short space of time. I'd worked with a client recently. They were shouted every day for 8 years, husband and wife. They were stuck at loggerheads with their son, and every day was stressful, and the mom thought she was failing. And within a month, she's like, I can't remember the last time I shouted. And it's like, oh, I love it. It's so rewarding. And like the way I actually, I was thinking this week, all the clients we've been working with, how they come to me in the beginning and the way they talk about their kids at the beginning is so different within a few sessions. The way they see their children, the way they understand situations, the way they talk about themselves is just, it's like night and day. It's incredible, the shift. And I think a lot of the work is more to do with, actually, we said at the beginning, it's more to do with like being with our children rather than trying to change our children's behavior, get stuck in the doing side of things, but actually language of listening, the coaching model I teach is more about how to be with your children, and how to communicate in a way that really enhances your ability to listen and to understand and bring out the best in you and your child.
Exactly. And there was a study also where they were looking at young delinquents, and then they were putting them in therapy. Nothing changed, and then they put their parents in therapy, and suddenly they were good, so to say.
Wow.
They weren't troublesome anymore because, yeah, that's the root of it. Like, if the kid acts out, maybe there's a reason. They're not just some Satan like spawn or whatever. Maybe, yeah, there's something there. Maybe you need to
Yes.
actually sit down and have an actual bonding or conversation, understanding, or like help somebody with that. Because well,
100%. Yes. Because I think, when I work with clients, I only see the parents, I don't see the children. And there's this thing like, well, our child is broken, we need to send our child off to therapy. And the child goes for an hour a week.
feels
Nothing
rejected.
changes because nothing changes at home.
Yeah.
And when you,
Even if it knows all of these tools to self-regulate, but the parents will not accommodate that. They will still punish you the same way, especially if you trigger them with like your more mature emotional handling of topics. Like sometimes when I try to be more emotionally mature with like people, just like try to use that, it triggers people. Like, why are you not shouting back at me? I'm like, no, let's
yes,
just settle this calm. Like, you calm down, and I'm like, we just have a like little breather, like 5 minutes apart. No, we like solve this right now. I'm just like, I can't talk to you right now. I feel triggered, and you're triggered, and then they get more triggered. I'm like, no, what, like they can't handle that. That.
yes, oh my,
So if both knew how to deal with their own stuff and then like maturely come together, like still emotions are important. Like you shouldn't just be like, oh, I will not ever talk to you when you're emotional. Like that's not what I mean. But like sometimes it shouldn't just be one-sided. If it's just with the parents and the kid has all of these tools, then it's even worse because the kid sees all of the stuff that's going on and then makes excuses almost for them or has to parent the parents.
yes, oh my goodness, yes,
No.
yes. Yeah, you see the dysfunction going on and you suddenly realize,
You can't unsee that anymore.
yeah, yeah. And it's difficult. So when you I wish there was more like understanding of how important it is to have the tools to parent and not wait to reach out when you're at rock bottom and, at your wits end ready to kick your kids out the house, but actually get support right from the beginning to be more aware because we don't have the tools ourselves. It was never given to us as children, and we can't pass it on to our kids. I don't have the tools to do it.
And it's bizarre to me also, like in the systems, like when you want to adopt a kid, you have to go through so many hoops to prove yourself, which is fair because you're taking on their life, right? But everybody can just pop out kids, so to say, like to say very, like you can just like make kids, boom, like if you're able to, like, and nobody like polices that, which also would be problematic, but like nobody gives you tools. Like in Germany, you can have the right to have a midwife, so she will like be there checking on your before the birth and half a year after the birth, teaching you all of the essential skills to like keep this baby alive and cuddle it, like put it in the blanket, blah, blah. Like all of these specific skills that maybe you could read and look at a YouTube video, but you're still freaking out as a parent. But like, if there would be something for adults to go to, like as the kid progresses, instead of just completely leaving it in their hands, maybe by a book or whatever, I don't know. Like they don't get support. They don't have like, it would just be nice to like go to like a club where you can like vent about something like my kid did this thing. It's so annoying, but like kids be dumb like sometimes, but also you have emotional support and actually like professional support. Like if there would be something that you don't have to fight on your own accord and like accommodate that, and like that's already so much mental load. If I don't know, like that would be ideal, obviously, but like if there would be some school, like you put kids through school, why can't we have adults like school in a way that it's just a crutch, like training wheels?
I agree, but I think with parenting, there's so much shame or fear around that we're getting it wrong, and people think that if somebody tells you another way, it's proof that you're not good enough somehow.
Oh yeah, there's often always like this one solution. I'm like, that's BS.
Yes, and I think there's so much shame and judgment around that. I remember when I was struggling with my daughter's out of control behavior, I really wish someone had taken me to the side and said, "You know what? There's another way."
Oh,
I really wish someone had. So I'm glad I now know the other way.
Good. Or like just patience, like a classic example in an airplane when you're like, oh no, this kid's gonna be on the plane, or like babies, oh my god, and it's gonna be awful for everybody. And then some parents, I don't know, there's been this thing, like, was it last year, where like parents put like a little bag of sweets on all of the seats and saying, I'm sorry, we're flying with a baby, we apologize in advance. And then the internet had like a field trip on that, like, oh, parents shouldn't have to do that. And other people like, yeah, damn right they did that because babies are annoying on an airplane. Like it's both. It's hard. You can't just control your baby like that. Especially if it's a baby, or like,
oh my god, yes.
And then the pressure in the plane, it's loud, it's noisy, it's smelly, it's scary. Like there's so many things you cannot control, and you can shout at the kid, you can like rein them in or whatever. Like nothing. Like it's cruel.
It's cruel.
But also, even if you reason with them, even if you like prime them, even like you cannot control the situation. You cannot control the sensory stimulus if that's what's going on.
Oh yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Yes, so like our children are not puppets. We don't have strings that we're making them move. I remember talking with my daughter. I was told like, you're just letting her do that. Like, how am I letting her do that? I'm not like controlling her. Like buttons or strings. Like, how am I? And it just puts so much unnecessary pressure on both of us.
Yeah, and it's this shame around like how you should be parenting, how the kids should be behaving. And again, I also see like the cultural aspect. Like I was so mind blown, like seeing parents raised in Germany, and then we had like holidays in Denmark, and people in the Nordic countries dote on children. They love children, and I was so surprised that like when somebody shouted at the kid on the street, like a tourist, everybody stopped and glared at them like, don't you dare yell at kids in this country. And I was like I was like 10 or something. It was like, wait, what? It's not, that's okay to get somebody to have your back, so you don't shout at kids. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know that was a thing. I was like, oh god, isn't that sad?
Oh, I love that.
And so, like, in some countries, people are like, oh, I can hit my kid. Like, there's all of these debates, but at the end of the day, like, okay, so if you hit your kids and you hit you back, again, that's the double standard. It's stupid. If you shout at your kids, they shout back on you. That's not allowed. And that's what you're raising kids to be, just maniacs who don't regulate anything, but they just have a little meltdown everywhere and then have little tantrums.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah. Anyway, that wasn't segue.
Wow, no, I love that. To have such respect for kids.
I love that too. And they just all, I don't know. I was just so in love with that. Like, even like when I moved to Sweden like a couple of years ago as an adult, and then there were all of these, I don't know, they all looked like supermodels on these beaches. I was like, what's going on? Where's Photoshop in real life? What the heck? And they all had these beautiful little blonde babies and kids, and they were all well behaved. And I was at this one concert, And I kid you not, there were these kids down like in front of the stage where usually people would stand, but like everybody said, and the kids were doing their thing. And I was like, oh my God, I was watching the kids. I was like the typical German person. I'm like, oh my God, like who watches the kids? Who do the kids belong to? Like, what if the kids break their neck? Like, who is there to save them? And then one of the kids had like a lollipop and she was doing cartwheels. I was like, that's unsafe. Anybody save them? And nobody cared. They were all like, they were watching. Everybody like, but they were just letting the kids be kids. I was like, are the kids annoying? Like, I want to watch the scene, but I'm watching the kids. Nobody cared about the kids, right? And I was like, this is bizarre. Like, I was like, this is new to me. Like, people would be so annoyed. Like, in Germany, everybody would have been like complaining about the kids and used to that and more, right? And they were just completely zoning them out. They were looking at the performance and no kid got hurt. Like, one of them like tumbled over and the dad was like, are you okay? And the kid was like, cool. And then it just resumed. And I was like, wait, you didn't have like a little crying fit? Like, I was like, oh my God. I was just so bizarre. I just looked at the kids the entire time. I couldn't even watch the show. I had like this weird meta moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is amazing, isn't it? When you allow kids just to be themselves and not jump in and feel like we have to fix everything. And
Yeah, like had
enjoy
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were fun to watch. It was like they're like dancing and like interpretive dance. It was like that's actually cool to watch. Like you have the sound from the singer, but like they have much better performance. So it's like getting best of both worlds. I'm like, yeah, rock that little like troll dressy. Like I don't know, like they're adorable.
Yeah, I love kids. I love that. I love. Yeah, I'm one of those people that run down the street. They see a baby. My kids hate it, but I love babies. I love babies, little ones, and I'd stop talking to them.
Oh. Oh, that's so cool.
I love little ones because my kids are both taller than me now, and I love little ones. I love how they are, and just
yeah. No, I like that too. Like I like them in doses, like you know, when they're not mine.
yeah, because it is relentless when you have little ones. You can't leave them alone for a minute.
Yes,
it is relentless and never ending. So, and it's lovely to have them in small doses now since I've raised two.
Yeah, no, I like visiting friends with kids and then just like playing with them until they're exhausted or I'm exhausted and I can give them back, just getting the benefits of it.
Exactly.
But also being like too cool, like I don't know if I'm an aunt or whatever, I'm to them like I'm the cool person. Like they just call me like Mai and then they say my name. I was like, that's my Annemarie. I'm like, yes, I'm yours. Oh my God, yes, you have my heart.
Yeah. I think you're great with kids because you know how you deserve to be treated, so you want to pass on.
And I treat them like my best friend, she's always like, you just like a big child. I'm like, yes, that's why they love it. And also like, I will not like when they mess with me, I will mess with them and it throws them off so quick. Like sometimes like they will say stupid stuff to like, I don't know, like because kids do that and I will like make up stuff too. And then we're like, play that game like too. Like I will not, like I will meet you at your level. Like I
love that. Yeah.
If you want to go like stupid, like I don't know, I will do stupid.
I love that because you know what you wanted.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I have somebody to like be silly with. Like, a lot of adults I can't do that with. They'll be like, oh, you're so like silly, be grown up. I'm like, no, watch me. Right? And so like if there's a kid, there's like also an excuse in some way, but it's also like, I can be playful and like get that need met. And then they feel also seen in that way where I'm not like, oh, please sit straight. Like look at prim and proper. I'm like, no, let's just do a cartwheel together. Let's do that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Fun. It's fun.
It's fun.
Life's too short to be serious.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why we all so dull, boo?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, we could talk on for hours and hours, but yeah. Is there something else that we didn't that you want to leave the people with, like a pearl of wisdom at the end?
I have a pearl of wisdom
with your book, like.
Oh yeah, my book. Yeah, my book is coming out. I don't know. I've written a book that I really wish I had when I was struggling with my daughter, and it is an interactive guidebook that really teaches you the coaching model that I use and teach, but it is interactive, so it's really tailored to what you want for your family to understand why you do what you do. It's got places that ask you questions, places to reflect, actually gives you tools and stories about how to implement it. So I've got personal stories from clients, and really the how-to and the why of parenting. And the feedback I've had so far is amazing. Because, do you know, it takes you on a parenting journey. It really gives you actionable tools to use. It's not just theory and know-how. You know, like we all know we want to raise happy, confident children, but it's like, but how do I do it? So I want to teach parents the actual
Exactly. The steps is like clean up your room.
Yeah.
How?
Exactly, that of the how to. And it's not me telling you how to parent. It's me telling you how your children work. So you have an understanding of how your children work, why you do what you do. It's all based on self-compassion and understanding. And that, you know, all growth is to acceptance of where we are and who we are. And then we move on.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And it just like is a skill you keep throughout your life and it serves you. It just builds resilience, it builds love and compassion for yourself and others. Like it's just this beautiful snowball effect.
Yes.
Domino effect.
Yes. And these tools I teach are for actually the workbook is for young children all the way up to teenagers. I've got clients and people that read the book that I've used it with my husband as well. Like what he was saying, it's just how humans work. So it's really build on those skills. It's not something you have to learn in the toddler stage and then learn something else in when they're teenagers. It's actually the tools for life. So
Yeah.
you read it once and you have these tools.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Where can people find you?
So people find me on Keeping Your Cool Parenting. I've got a website, keepingyourcoolparenting.com, on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all those.
And all of the links are down below in the show notes.
See?
So, yeah, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your wisdoms and helping to make the world a better place by saving the kids and saving the parents and just making us better, well-rounded human beings. Oh, I love that.
It was lovely chatting.
It was lovely chatting with you too. Wish you a fabulous day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this podcast episode. As always, I love going so deep into the topic and completely skipping small talk because we have time for not doing that. We have time for everything else. That was a weird sentence, never mind. But I just love talking about reparenting or different parenting approaches because it just helps me also work on my stuff. And if you can tell, I have a lot of stuff and I'm working on stuff and it's forever a process and that's cool and that's fine. And I just loved how Camilla just asserted and mirrored back the growth that sometimes I take for granted. And, you know, I think a lot of people take their development through life for granted because you just gradually, as you're living day to day, get used to things, get accustomed to new habits or thought patterns. And again, if you look at it, sometimes they don't serve you anymore. Sometimes they never really did. So this process of unlearning is constant. And I think it's also like a gift that we can have to be mindful because it can help you be more centered and can help you help other people as well, because you can only do that when you show up in your fullest self. You don't fill from a full cup, not an empty cup. Like, oh God, I'm messing up the little sayings. Anyway, I hope you get what I'm saying. So yeah, you have to fill up your own cup before you can pour it into someone else's cup. Did I get that correct now? I hope so. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you want to connect with us, if you want to get in touch, then all of the links are down below in the description, in the show notes. So you can say hi, you can leave some feedback, you can leave your thoughts. We always love to hear from you. And if you know someone, or if you are someone who would love to be on this podcast and love to talk about your experiences in life and business and how you learned to show up as your truest self and be vulnerable in that, but also attract the right kind of people who vibe with that, because that's what we're here, like the space to just let people be, and in turn also you can be you. And sometimes you need to figure out what that actually means and who that actually is, and it's a journey as well, and we're ever changing, so it's constant, which is also fun. So if that's your vibe, don't forget to subscribe and also rate this episode. That would help me so tremendously to push it out more to other people, so you can also share it. That would be amazing. And as always, I'll leave you until next week with the next fresh episode and wish you a fabulous week. Bye.